So we're here.
So what's up?
Wow, this conversation. First of all, my name is Tasha.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't met, but I'm looking forward to meeting you when you come to Rotterdam, which is my city.
Yeah, looking forward to being there.
And I'm extremely excited to be just a witness to this what is promising to be a very, very interesting conversation between two giants. Um,
Okay.
we did some amazing uh, contribution contributions to hip hop in
Okay.
general, and that's just a very big understatement. So
Mm-hmm.
first of all, I've gotten a briefing, but I'm keeping it to the side. I think everybody had the same outline of what we're going to try to discuss. And
Okay.
my role today is just to listen, to be a witness, and every now and then ask the questions.
Okay.
And I think I'm mainly gonna be witness and just steer you guys when you guys go too deep into the conversation, which I hope happens all the time.
Yeah.
So
No
No, I
problem.
just
Get it on.
yeah, first off, there is only one giant in the room, and that's Fab Five Freddy. I'm just a regular guy. I'm just to be honest,
Okay.
you know. And especially of course in Holland and the Netherlands, of course, they see me as a great DJ, entrepreneur, etc., etc. But
Uh-huh.
what Fab Five Freddy did for the culture itself, without him, we wouldn't be sitting right here.
Hmm.
Simple as that. But that probably he already knows. So
Thank
uh,
you, though.
I,
Thank
I
you.
think I think there's only one giant in the room. I just want to be a giant at one point because we're
Mhm.
doing a lot of stuff, of course, with
Thank
Patta.
you.
And
So you're Edson.
that's right.
Okay.
you want me to do a brief introduction?
Whatever. Let's get it on. I'm ready.
Okay, good. Well, the reason, and I love that's one of the big things that Edson has is he's always extremely humble, saying that he's just a kid who loves hip hop, basically. And I think that's how it started out. But he built together with his partner an amazing brand
Mm.
that is not just a clothing brand, but is he built a running team. He has a Patta sound system. Patta is a community
Mm.
of basically lovers of hip hop. But
Wait. You said Patta?
Patta,
Okay. I think I've seen that on the emails, but I didn't know what that was.
well,
What is Patta? Is that the name of his brand?
that's the name of his brand. I don't mean to speak for you, Edson.
No, go ahead. I just want to know the introduction. I'm very curious.
You're very curious. Well, started out. I've been, of course, doing my homework. Been an admirer of Edson for years as well.
Thank
But
you.
what I feel is that he started out. He always says either you go to school and study, or you do your thing. And what he did is he did his thing really big and made a big impact in the Netherlands.
God.
Built a brand for out of his love for sneakers. Went to New York and kept coming back with bags of sneakers that everybody wanted to buy because
I
they
love it.
get it over here. Sold them, and then decided to just build a business out of it. And it's now one of the largest streetwear companies, I think, in Europe. With
Patta or one T or two T's?
two.
Two T's. Okay, got it.
And Patta means shoe in Surinamese.
Got you. That says a lot.
As a fellow Surinamese person, that inspired so many of us to see what this man from Amsterdam did for the culture, not just making sure everybody had fly gear, but also that the values of hip hop were respected, building the community, taking care of each other, highlighting one another, being about wealth, health, fitness, entrepreneurship, but also ownership, and taught us all about it. And as well as being an amazing DJ. Rock a party any day. So meet Edson Sabayo.
Yeah.
Nice, nice, nice.
It's a
Yep.
great introduction. Yeah, basically what she said, that's true. But also when we started Patta, that was like almost 20 years ago.
Ah.
Yeah, I used to collect sneakers or just take sneakers back in 80, 88, 89. I'm 51 years old. I guess you are like 63 or 64, 63, I guess. So you have more of a legacy, etc., more baggage than me. We used to grow up on you. Of course, Star Wars, Wild Star, when that came over, you have to understand, and you probably do, that when Wild Star, the movie was made, you produced, or you was one of the producers, or you was in that team to do that. When it came to Holland, it was mind-blowing. For me personally, I like Star Wars better because of the documentary vibe, but it was the same stuff. And then we started following. Of course, that was, I always say like what Natasha saying, and she said like a great singer-songwriter, but what she said, it was true. Like in 84, 85, when you go from, we call it lagere school, so it's like going to high school. There's only two options, like, or you just go study, or you just looking for action, or be like class clown or whatsoever. And you know, hip hop came in that place, especially the graffiti scene, but also music.
Right.
You probably know that the Dutch by itself is like entrepreneurial, or like, you know, doing dumb shit. They call it, you know, they call it the golden age, but it was like slave trades and stupid shit. But there was also like in business, import and export. So when in 82, 81, when they heard about music, rap music, they were like import shops buying records and getting that stuff in. Especially it blew a little bit up, especially when we saw Wild Style. That's like 84, like 80 something, like that became like, oh, this is what people are doing. Shit, we want to be part of that. And for me personally, it was in the golden, you guys call it the golden age between 86 and 88, where I was like, yo, everybody, it was fantastic. And also before that, listening to some tapes, not even like tapes from artists belling each other, but radio cassette tapes of how you say that, radio stations, WLS, Kiss FM, etc., with all the commercials in it, Nobody Beats the Quiz, etc. Like, yo, this is phenomenon, people rapping. Of course, sorry that I'm talking too much now, that London is close by, so we have a big influence from London.
Yeah.
With when people came from the States to London or even to Paris whatsoever. But we also had influence of the American base located in Germany. So all these influences came to Amsterdam. This is way before, of course, internet and etc. And for us was the records, the sleeves. There were like a lot of information was on these. We was studying the sleeve like it was like a Bible. Let me put it that way. What do they wear? What is that? Who are the credits? Who is Fab Five Freddy? Who is let's say cool DJ Red Alert? Who is, you know, Jesse J? What is a Def Jam? So you trying to get all these information with like-minded kids. Where you go into school with, because she was looking for the adventure instead of like going into the books.
Yeah.
And then in Amsterdam, but also in Rotterdam, you had like a lot of youth centers came together and listening to that form of music where people were actually rapping on beat. And especially also in London, you know, you had these labels, I guess, what was it? Electro Sounds, Electro something, where you had specific records in a mix on a record. Not that I had a record player, but a friend of ours was a guy who had like a record player who had these records that was imported from the States that you could listen to those records. And he was very fascinating. And then when, especially what I said before, when the graffiti came in, I mean, like, because you obviously said was in a graffiti a group, the Fabulous Five, with of course with Lee. You know, when Lee came, was a big thing. Was like a exhibition, exhibition in Amsterdam. And when that came, like, people were like, "Yo," you know, seeing like pieces and throw ups. And before that was only tags, and a lot of tags from the punk scene, etc. And that's what I also liked about you, is that you connected all these dots and brought that from downtown towards uptown.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, this is some, you know, two different worlds, but combining that, there is a glue in between. And that glue must be the music or the so-called culture that can, get us together, which was, to me, in a later perspective, is that very interesting. Because like Tasha said, not only, you know, I love hip hop or what, I'm a fan, etc. But I know the value. For me, it's real simple. Doing something, creating something out of nothing, which is very valuable, of course, within hip hop. Creating something out of nothing, which is my number one core reason to even love this. But it's also a cultural thing with the Surinamese influence. My parents are from Suriname, which is a country in South America, above Brazil, and they traded Suriname, of course, with the English, so the Dutch. So you know about that. So also in New York, in Brooklyn, you have like a little Surinamese community. They have like this little festival, the Paku Festival, what we have in Amsterdam. They have it over there too. So there's a lot of, how you say that, dots that will connect between the Netherlands, Suriname, and New York, with New York is the birthplace and the Mecca of hip hop. So I'm very, not lucky, but I'm very blessed to have all these pieces come together and try to showcase it to the world, what we do with Patta in Amsterdam, and not only in Europe, but also to the rest of the world, because the world is now, small.
Yes.
In the days you couldn't even believe that you would go, let's say, to any country, let's say in Asia, to Indonesia or to Japan or to Korea, that they would actually listen to something that would happen in New York that is spread out so much all over the world. You couldn't believe that. You was in the mix, and you still is. That's why you're the giant over here. I'm just, you know, following the footsteps and be very humble and be like, yo, this is crazy. Because when they told me like last week, saying like, yo, Ed, you got this interview with Fab Five Freddy, I'm like, damn, yo. I don't want to curse, but I was like, damn. You know what I'm saying? Not even like, you know, but it is what it is. I have to give you your flowers. But still, most of the times, people that are that age or from like the old period or like still, they're not doing anything no more. They're just leaning back on the stuff that they did. Like, what do you do? Because hip hop is only 50 years old. It's not like 100 or 120 or 200 years, etc., etc.
True.
It's just we're just getting started. And for us as grown-ups, I mean, like, you're a little bit older than me, but for grown-ups is to still educate or even passing the torch to like-minded people, which is for me very important. And that's what we're trying to do with Patta. Not only do we have a store, oh, by the way, we're like a Black independent label company, so we have no investors, no nothing. We have a store in Amsterdam, we have a store in Milan, and we have a store in London. We have a Patta running team, because I think it's very important for us to be active. It will clear your mind, etc., to put things in perspective. Patta sound system, that's obvious, because music, I've been DJing since '92. Before that, there was no segregation, so to speak, within hip hop to me. So if you was doing graffiti, you would probably also do some hip hop, some rapping, or you did some. There was no like 4 or 5 elements whatsoever. There was everything.
Yeah.
And I think we're now gonna go back to that space where everything is one. You can do so much more with the core business or with the core sayings, like making something out of nothing. I mean, like meetings and etc. I always keep in mind the hip hop perspective in that sense, to make people understand that we're not that stupid, ignorant, and whatsoever. It's a lot of work and thought behind this whole thing.
True.
So yeah,
it's beautiful. It's beautiful to hear this conversation unfold, because it's a beautiful bridge to something I think we really want to know, and that is hip hop. Edson just said it. Hip hop is 50 now. It's grown. It's mature. It's doing huge things. It came out of the Bronx and now it's everywhere. How did that happen is what people want to know, because the generation like yourself that started it are still young at heart, young in body, soul, and mind, and still eager to pass the torch when it's a mature style now of music. It's mature. We can't say that this rambunctious baby is not growing up. Can you take us back to the early beginnings of the birthing of hip hop? Can you take us back to that space? The environment.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, there's actually a good documentary you should look at. It's on YouTube. It's called Founding Fathers. I'm in it. Friends of mine made it. It's about 10 years old now. We didn't get it picked up on a platform. I'm actually just now trying to get it to people at Netflix to see if they might be interested. So this documentary is about the mobile DJs before hip hop. A lot of people, because Kool Herc is of Jamaican origin, people just really assume that because of the dancehall culture in Jamaica and Kool Herc coming from there, that he picked up that and brought that to New York, the Bronx, and that was the beginning. But that's totally wrong. Kool Herc himself let me know when he comes to New York, he's literally a small boy, 10, 11, 12 years old. What actually happened regarding that is there was a parallel, simultaneous development among people that had access to the same tools, if you will, sound systems, the beginning of sound systems. But what the real inspiration was on the New York side of those early DJs that did it, they were more mobile sound system disco DJs in New York, which went back, this might even have begun in the late 60s and really developed through the 70s. And this documentary that I mentioned, Founding Fathers, focuses on a lot of those guys that were these pioneers with sound systems, 2 turntables, not really rapping as a developed thing, but there were people that would talk on the mic. But the whole inspiration was emulating what the Black radio DJs were doing on the Black radio stations, which also was the inspiration of the Jamaican dancehall scene. On late nights, they can pick up on a good night radio stations coming from New Orleans and coming from Florida. If the weather was right, the frequency would travel to Jamaica, and this is how they heard. So literally what the dancehall DJs in Jamaica were doing was emulating the Black radio guys, and the idea of talking a little jive talk and playing some cool music and keeping that music going continuously was a phenomenal innovation. And that similar thing was going on in New York with many guys. As a kid, I wasn't able to move around and go to parties, but in the summers at block parties and park jams, some of these early mobile disco DJs came out and played. This was a phenomenal thing, big crowds in the parks, but these guys didn't make records. They played the coolest Black music, soul, funk, and what have you, and then a particular type of music that was developed pretty much by Black and Latin and also people on the gay scene they developed the disco remix or the extended mix and this thing. And so that was a street hood thing, which then got usurped, if you will, by, you know, bigger forces with big money. Then came discotheques like Studio 54, things that got a lot of attention. Then came movies like Saturday Night Fever, which were not about us, Italian kid way out in Brooklyn. And that made it a mega thing. And then record companies were putting out disco record after disco record. And a lot of those records were not great music. It was just a new way to market and sell. So all of this goes on before this thing we have called hip hop. And so what happens is Kool Herc and many other people were inspired by this first wave of DJs. These guys were rock star idols in the hood among people that knew, oh, you got people like Pete, DJ Jones. The original person with the Grandmaster in front of his name was Grandmaster Flowers. There was another one, Maboya, Plumber. There was a bunch of these guys that were huge, and that's what they did. Once again, mobile disco DJs. And Kool Herc was inspired by that. And also what Kool Herc did, which was really special, as this disco thing grew, it had a fake air of like dress up to go to these parties. It's like if you were young and black and you were plugged into the disco scene, on the flyers for these parties, they would always say no sneakers, which was code. If you were poor and like ghetto, and this was before the whole Pumas and the pretty sneakers. This is when we wore sneakers. This is what we wore in the hood, and we would wear them till they had holes in them. That was a thing. And then tie the sneakers together, which you might have seen images of, and throw them up on the light pole, like in the hood. So certain hoods that was real hood, light pole might have 50 pair of fucking sneakers that were 10 years old, looking like, ugh. But that was a thing that people on the block, like, yo, like mine is up there and yo, yours is over there. And that was like a thing, but that was like some other shit. But those flyers would say no sneakers, which really was code. If you couldn't afford to get a nice outfit on, you couldn't go to those parties. So what Kool Herc's motivation was, he wanted to be a DJ like so many other people did, but he was, you know, the Bronx had been burnt out damn near to the ground. Owners of the buildings was lighting them on fire to get the insurance money. It was a really bad time in New York back then in the 70s. The gangs, the South Bronx gangs, there was some savage, otherworldly shit going on. But Kool Herc wanted to entertain for the local kids in the communities, and that's who he invited, people with sneakers, to come to his party. And the first of his parties, which now has become a famous thing, 1520, a lot of people who don't know what I'm telling you, and this is many people, think Kool Herc started this whole thing with the DJs and the turntables. So that's my kind of expanded explanation for what happened and how this started. But that's just a piece of it. I can go on, but you let me know if you got another.
This is perfect, man. I mean, like, yeah, of course, with the mobile DJs,
Yeah,
looked at it. But for the people that don't know, what was that? It became like the thing for hip hop, that because he invented the merry-go-round, of course. But
okay, so Kool Herc, the way I look at it is Kool Herc had an inkling to try to do something without having all the tools to make it happen. But the idea of capturing the most exciting part of a record, known as the breakbeat, the climax, the orgasm of the record, if you want to take it there like that, in terms of the build up to this point, which if you knew that record was on, you'd be like, oh my God, like you dancing. And then when that part comes in, you just feel so good. The idea was to extend that. Mm-hmm. And Kool Herc tried to do that without having developed the skills, but what they call it back then was something called needle drop.
Word.
Which was rarely perfect. Mm-hmm. But if you come up to the climax of any of the classic breakbeat records, yeah. Apache, whatever. I can't think of all
whatever.
the names. If you could figure out a way to extend the most exciting climactic part of the record, that's what Kool Herc apparently attempted. But at some of his first parties were people like Theodore, like Flash, and other wannabe DJs that heard what he was trying. And Flash specifically, who speaks just like a scientist. If you ever heard his interviews, there was a really good book these English guys did back in the 90s, a little over 20 years ago. I believe the title is something to the effect of, I think a DJ saved my life, or
last night,
like the song. These are some English guys that came to New York, and I saw, like, if I feel somebody really gets it, that gets me going. And when I'll give them the real deal. Sometimes I'm doing interviews. If I see this is some bullshit, I ain't going nowhere near this shit, because it's like a waste of oxygen. Like, what the fuck? But these dudes were really dialed in on a lot of shit. You know how them English can do. I see the Dutch do it too. Really dig into every piece of what the fuck is going on. And they had great questions. They knew a lot. So I told them this story, but they interviewed Flash extensively, and Flash kind of explains how he went out and did kind of research and trying to figure out, you probably know this story, like, how could I really do this from record to record,
left to right.
And what Flash found was the one turntable that would do that was the Direct Drive Technics 1200, which immediately when he took his hand off, it was at speed. And that allowed him to mark the record and continually do that thing that Herc had attempted. Flash was like, I gotta perfect this shit. I know it can be done. So to hear Flash explain, he went through this process. He was able to figure it out, what turntables could do it. And that was a breakthrough moment that then other people learned from him.
So beautiful. I mean, like how you talk, it's beautiful, because the only thing when I see it is it's only on television. Now you hear it from like first-handed.
Yeah.
And also, that Flash story that he's like, okay, he was really a science, like figuring shit out, like a crossfade. Or like not even the crossfade, it's like the thing where you listen to one side of the headphone.
Yes, he came up with a way to make that happen.
He came up with that shit. So he's a scientist in that. Then he had to find out, okay, this Technics 1200, it goes fast, but underneath is the rubber thing. I need to have, so he went to his mom's, or like his
mat. Yes, that's the he got the mat.
Right?
So the record could move.
He got the silk thing.
Yes.
Now for DJs nowadays, people don't even know about turntables. But let's say the 90s, you used to have slip mats. Slip mat is actually an invention. If he had some copyrights on that shit, or even points, that's a different subject. But that's also really good. That fast forward to interrupt you, but fast forward.
Go ahead.
Fast forward to now, like all of these things. Like maybe to create a slip mat or whatever, trying to teach those kids, use a contract. Let's make a contract and see, like, where everything, what points do you get, etc. I had to learn it myself too. Yeah. Because over all those years, and you know how that stuff goes, people get screwed in the ass, fucked up in the ass, because some people be like, all right, we don't do this points, whatever. Yeah. But we never got taught by our own. Because we never had that. So now I'm in this phase. I'm in this thing now that I've learned so much. Let me pass the torch, what I've learned, not only the great stories, but how to profit and capitalize on stuff that you created.
Yeah, absolutely.
You made. That if you want to do like a clothing line, or even with shoes, or any kind of business, think about hip hop minded, like, oh, on the other side, another guy comes to me, oh, you're on the other side of the table, let's create something. You know what? This is my creation. You need to pay me. Or at least let's make a deal and to work together. So it's so beautiful that, and what I really like is that people from, like, especially with you now at the moment, that you are so, how you say that, have the spark in the eye to tell this story. Because most of them are like, that man, that was back. No, because you just want to bring that to the youth and to the kids to learn about the situations that we had back in the days.
Okay, so I'm going to show you something right now. This is I'm going to soon be working on my biography, right? And I can tell this story like a pretty thing. But I want to show you something. I'm in my bedroom here. I move around. I own a townhouse in Harlem, and so it's a little cooler. So I changed different rooms. But this room in particular has some photos that I'm going to show you. I'm going to hold the computer up so I can see, but I'm going to tell you what these photos are. So this is a big piece about who I am and where I come from. So my father grew up in Brooklyn, and he was best friends growing up with a person by the name of Max Roach. And Max Roach was one of the pivotal jazz drummers at the time when a new form of jazz was created called bebop. So along with Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, and many others, the key drummer in that was Max Roach, who grew up in Brooklyn, who was my godfather and was best friends with my dad. Those guys are all up. Hold that thought. Those guys are all in heaven right now. But one of my dad's friends took these incredible color photos at a time when color photos was not a big thing. And this is some photos from jazz gigs that my father and them would give in the early 50s. And these are the stories that I grew up hearing constantly, and without being really conscious of the effect it played on me. This was a big motivator. Let me show you some of these pictures. I don't know if how well you could see this image.
No, you can't. It's reflecting.
Is that Miles Davis on trumpet?
Right. That's Miles on trumpet, Thelonious Monk on piano. That's Max Roach over there on drums, which you probably can't see. Gigi Grice, Charlie Mingus was playing the bass. This is my dad here hanging out. This is early 50s, way before he got with my mom at a jazz club in Chicago. That's my dad. That's Max Roach behind the bar. Couple of cute ladies, you know.
They had to be there.
You know, trying to get their moves on. This is another gig, Carmen McRae, other guys. This is at a thing in Brooklyn. My dad and them would give. If you could see that, that's Max on drums, Clifford Brown playing there. There's Miles Davis over the bed. So that's just a little peek at a big part of my life. And my dad would play all the music from his childhood all the time. They would talk. They were highly intelligent guys. They were super connected to what was going on around them. My father was at Martin Luther King's March on Washington. He was also in the room when Malcolm X was assassinated. Cannabis smokers, they were really hip, but at the same time, they were super smart, but they couldn't do things. Max and those guys wanted to start their own labels. They wanted to control their narrative. They wanted to be the ones that wrote the articles and did these things. We could not do those things at that time.
Yeah.
And they were frustrated that they couldn't. So I grew up hearing all these stories. So a big thing that motivated me and has kind of dictated a lot of what I've done. I wanted to obviously be a creative, but it was very important for me to control the narrative. Like, I'm going to tell this story. I got plenty of friends of every nationality and skin color, and there's, you know, good people and bad people of every color. But I just wanted to be the one to be able to describe and dictate what this was. And that was in me early on. So I'm saying all that to set up, in the beginning, when I was trying to figure out a way to be a visual artist, to tell this story, when nothing positive was being written about young people doing this graffiti. In fact, whenever young Blacks and Latins were depicted in the press, it was almost always around something negative. Like if they got on a hat and they looking like this, be wary of them. They're going to rob you. They're the worst. So we were always depicted like that. And I wanted to figure out a way to put us in a better light, to present what we were doing in a more effective way. And I thought, damn, if we could make a movie, that might be a way to fucking tell this story. So that motivation of wanting to do that is what led to the film Wild Style. Me being on screen was never a part of the plan, but Charlie, the director, at the last minute, we had cast everybody, and we were sitting there like, how are we gonna get that guy to be Fade? And then he's looking at me, like, why are you looking at me like that? And then he went this whole thing to convince me to be in it. And I was not trying. I always wanted to play the background and just be like the puppeteer, manipulating shit. But I'm still living in Brooklyn at the time. This is like, God, 80, 19, just about 1980.
Yeah.
Of course, was on the downtown scene. I'm taking that train ride back and forth, trying to figure shit out. I met Jean-Michel. We became tight. We both were thinking on a similar plane. How do we figure this shit out? But Jean was couch surfing at people's cribs, and he was living in the city. At the end, when the clubs closed, 4, 5, 6 in the morning, I gotta wait in the train. So take that long 1.5, 2-hour ride back to Brooklyn. Charlie was like, with the extra money you'll get, you might be able to maybe get your own place. And I was like, and so that was when I ended up on screen in Wild Style. But more important thing was the ideas also that I brought to the table was, let's show that this whole thing is one thing. This did not exist anywhere in the city where people doing graffiti were going to rap shows and people doing rap were also break. It wasn't all as connected, but we were all from the same place I knew. And I figured, let's make it seem like one thing to make the young Black and Latin kid put us in a better light. That was my motivation, to rock the house for the people in the hoods in the city, and for the arty, underground arty friends that we had connected on the downtown scene in New York. That was the motivation to do that right for that crowd. Everything else, this global shit, 50 years later, still blows my mind.
Yeah. What is so beautiful is that also, of course, in Wild Style, 100% or maybe 99% of the people that acting are actually no actors.
Correct. That was another thing. So what happened was I connect with this guy, Charlie. It's a great story. I love telling it. When I come there to do my talk, I've got to, I tried to do this before. I did this once before about 7 or 8 years ago. And I told Aziz, as this whole thing came together, I said, man, there was a way I did it. A lot of what I've been blessed to have done has a lot of the significant high points have been on camera or with me behind the camera, and we put it all together. And I did this talk where I talk a little bit, then I show a clip, then I talk a little bit, then I show a clip, because there's all these clips. And so as Aziz said, oh, I got a dude on my staff, we'll put that shit together. I'm like, oh my God. I sent him all these clips, which are literally on YouTube, picked out the points in and out. He put it all together already. We're going to move a few things around, but this is the talk I'm going to give. So I'm going to show you and the people that come to this talk that I'm going to give when they see the Contact High exhibit, and show and tell literally. Because like I said, the idea was to put this all together as one. And because I had an idea that these people on the punk rock scene, and reading about what they were doing, I said, these white boys are so crazy. Mm-hmm. This shit that I'm talking about, we people doing this graffiti are like artists. I figured, because there was nothing positive written about any of this shit. Nothing. It was way underground. I said, these guys, what I'm hearing about these punk rock people, the Sex Pistols and the Clash, so they might be open enough to listen to these ideas. Yeah. And that was what led me to connect with people on that scene. When I shared these ideas, they were like, oh man, we love this. And they embraced me, they mentored me. And it was the same deal with Jean-Michel. So this is how I got connected with people like Blondie. Yeah, while I have this idea to make this movie, they're supporting anything we can do. We got you. They believed in these stories I have, which created the film, which actually cemented this whole idea that this whole thing is interconnected. Not trying to take all the credit. I just
no, but
you know,
it's fantastic. And also I think in that era, then also the punk rock scene and also hip hop culture, it's against the government. So we had like a
right. Not so much, you're right, not so much the government, but it was against that established norm, whatever that was,
yeah.
because that's what punk rock, I studied this shit. They were so going against what the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, those groups that got rich and they were rock stars. And punk rock motherfuckers was like, we smashing all that up. I was like, oh, these dudes is, they talking wild and crazy and they getting big exposure. I said, if I could talk to some of these people that we're doing something, that was my argument. When I met with Blondie and key people, I said, man, I feel there's a similar connection with the spirit. Yeah, the musics were different, but the attitude, there was a similar, and they completely got it. And that's, I can't tell you how remarkable it was to get
it's beautiful.
Because it was both street culture, basically coming from nothing, building something up, and fighting the system as well. Like anything, injustice, any inequality, it would just going against.
Well, all of that came, those things you said came a little later once the platform was built. And the specific breakthrough in terms of what the content could be about specifically was when, it's a little confusing because they bill it as Flash and the Furious 5, but it was really just Melly Mel and Duke Booty under Sugar Hill made a record called The Message. And I had been saying to myself, okay, this shit is developing. We on some like fantasy superhero shit. Like I'm gonna just make myself to be the, you know, the comic book dude who I love, but I'm gonna be the ghetto version. So I'm this and I'm that. I got Cadillacs. I'm on a spaceship. Nigga, it was all good and it sounded great. I'm like, yeah, but I remember thinking then, man, if somebody makes a record that's on some serious shit, I didn't know what that record was. I knew if something talking about something like socially relevant happened, I felt that would be a next step. And that next step happened. And it really allowed then generations of people to go against apartheid and to really illustrate the situations that we were living in as people of color, and to put that in the mix, which then turned into the conscious era of hip hop. That was like just beyond, that was like dreams coming true in terms of what we could articulate as people of color when rap still wasn't heard on every radio station coast to coast. It's so ubiquitous now. And I also just want to say that the Netherlands and England specifically were the first two markets outside of New York that got it all.
That's what I always say. That's what I always try to tell people. But people are like, nah. I'm like, look.
Trust me, England, we know. Because when the first groups toured with just one or two singles, it was England and the Netherlands. Because those records, the guys had gotten those records and they played.
Of course, the Grandmaster Flat. But the funny part of it, maybe people don't know, is that they didn't even want to do that record. Melly Mel, they didn't want to do the record, The Message.
Yeah.
They thought like, who wants to listen to this, right? They were like, but when they made it, it made such a great, the best impact ever.
Yeah.
Still up to this day. You can still play that record in the club, still.
Yeah.
People just remix it so many times.
Yes.
Melly Mel, his third verse, Childish Boy Without State of Mind, which actually was another track that he did, but he wrote he had the rhymes. You know that, right?
So, no, I didn't know the specifics, but I did know that essentially Sugar Hill, the unfortunate thing about the whole Sugar Hill, which is really problematic for me, and I don't go public.
No, don't worry. Don't leave it. Don't leave it.
No. I'm gonna say it like I say it, but I'm just saying that I don't publicly try to bash them because what they did was important and significant. However, had they have treated the artists fairly and equitably, as you've spoken about how you really should be doing business, there is no telling how successful that label could have been, considering all that happened, because they were first with a real push behind it, but their motivations were mirroring what so much of the record business had always been, ripping the artists off, treating the artists like shit. And had there been more equitable, they could have been, like I said, it's hard to describe how big. You could take Death Row, Motown, Stax, and a few others. They could have been all of that. Def Jam, they would have been the only game in town for a considerable point in time had they have treated the artists equitably. I don't want to, now I can go into detailed stories about how they did it, you know, but I'm just letting you know that it's unfortunate because a big part of the fact that Melly Mel and like Flash and them hate each other is because the way they dictated, you come in and you get on this record with Duke Booty and we gonna call it Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. So Melly Mel, you talk to him right now, he'll start ranting about how they call a record that, and those dudes wasn't on the record, and you can't argue with that. And this is a reflection how the Funky Four, the reason Double Trouble is in Wild Style as two people is because the group, we were going to feature the entire group because there was the dope at one of the dope groups at that time that had a woman out front, which she was incredible, Sha Rock. And they were going to be in Wild Style, and we were filming the movie, and that was the plan. And one day, Rodney C from the Funky Four comes to me on set. Now, he'd come to me, well, I can't go into this story, but what basically happened, he was telling me there were problems with the group, and they were trying to split the group up. He knew that he didn't feel they got what they should have gotten on the money side, and he was sure something was not right. And we were trying to tell him, but just stay together, keep the group together. We were going to figure out a way to actually help and assist. We were on the set one day shooting in Wild Style, and Rodney came up to me. He lived up the street from where we were filming at the Dixie Club. And he pulled me to the side. He says, yo, man, Fab, I gotta tell you something, man. Our group is over. I'm like, wait, what? What are you telling me? He's like, the Funky Four. I said, wait, Rodney, what the fuck are you saying to me? He said, yeah, man, Sha Rock and this one and that one are gonna stay together. And me and KK, we like, boom, wasn't fucking with it. I'm like, man, what are you saying to me? He says, but listen, I wrote this rhyme. Listen to this. And the rhyme he said to me as a tear comes down my face was the rhyme that you see him and KK perform in Wild Style. Here's a little story that must be told about two cool brothers that were put on hold. They try to hold us back from fortune and fame. They destroyed the crew and they killed the name. They walked on our ego, stepped on our pride, but true blue brothers stand side by side. Man, listen, he's telling me that shit. My mind is blown. It's a dope ass rhyme, but a tear. I don't want nobody to see me crying, but I'm like trying to like. And so at that point, I go and tell Charlie. I said, Charlie, you're not gonna believe what happened, man. I said, and I said, man, he told me this rhyme, and so Charlie was like, well, obviously, we won't be able to feature the whole group, but KK, Rockwell, and Rodney C are going to be in the movie, and that's Double Trouble. So that's one of the stories that I know about regarding the situation of that label. Like I said, I don't want to drag them because what they did put out, the things that broke the shit open. But then when you get close to what happened on the business side, and you go, man, look what they did.
First of all, it is actually mind-blowing to hear it as a huge lover of hip hop and everything it stands for, to hear these stories and to now finally know what's behind whatever it is that we saw. Because you were saying how the Netherlands and the UK were the two first markets to just, because we had to find it. It wasn't here. We couldn't find it. We had to look for it. If you weren't at the parties, you did not know what was coming out. Somebody would have a mixtape, everybody would copy it, and we all would collectively lose our minds. And now to hear those actual stories behind it, it's just.
So I think it was it was maybe the 20th. I'm just calculating because Wild Style comes out in about 82. 83. So 20 years would have been 2002 or something, 2003. And we had an event in Amsterdam where
I was there. I was there.
ah
I was
I
at
was
a
there.
was of course. I was at
oh
a
shit.
youth. It was at a youth center. You was there. Charlie Ahern was there.
Yes.
Crazy Legs was there, and then he said some shit that it's all of a sudden was supposed to go into a fight or like a
Oh.
rumble. You shushed it. You
Ah.
said like, oh, hold up, because he, of course, Crazy Legs being the arrogant at that moment he was at that point at that time.
Still is kind of, but that's
Of
okay.
course, you know how it is. So he said that to us, like we were sitting in the crowd, and it was like say old school B-boys was sitting.
Yeah, yes, that
81,
came out. I
82.
met a bunch of those guys. Yeah.
Word. They said like, yo, we was breaking on the Dam Square 81, 82.
Yeah.
And he was like, yo, Nick, what do you know about that? No. Like, well, you know about, you don't know nothing. And then all of a sudden, and then you came in between, it was like, yo, let's have a peaceful moment. We are here to celebrate.
Yeah.
Instead of fighting each other.
Wow. I forgot
You know,
that.
I remember this very clearly because it was in Amsterdam. Yeah, that shit was bugging. Bugged me
well, the thing I do remember that I was going to say, that's incredible. It must have been from one of those old school break guys. They were telling me how early they were on it, the records that they got on when the singles came over. And then that made me realize I would hear hanging around Russell and running them when their first groups came to Europe, how they all hit the Netherlands as well as England. And that explained why. So I realized at that trip, how early on you guys were with the culture.
Exactly. Even with Curtis Blow, like I said, Melly Mel, etc., they used to come over there. But also the graffiti scene came early.
Right. So what happened with the graffiti scene? There was a guy who I think passed maybe not long ago. He was a dealer. His name was Yaki Kornblit.
Yeah, Cornball, the Japanese dude or some shit.
No,
right?
no, Yaki Kornblit. He was Dutch. He was a Dutch guy, and he got on the graffiti scene. He had a gallery, and I was connected. I was like, you know, showing with this one, showing with that one. So I was a little leery, but he got with a bunch of guys, Dondi, Futura, Zeph, a bunch of guys. I'm sorry to get some water. A bunch of guys did things with him. So he basically ended up doing a good thing because he treated the guys like artists and what have you. And that's how the actual artists got to come over and do whatever else they did. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to go back real quick about your dad, because he was taking all the pictures. And Max Roach was also, what was Max Roach also in the jazz picture, up in Harlem?
Well, yeah, he was a key pivotal guy. Max Harlem, everywhere, 52nd Street, but he's from Brooklyn. So a big part of jazz history that my father and his friends talked about my whole growing life was about, they was all about Brooklyn.
Word.
And how once Max got big, and they were friends, they were like, well, let's give some parties, so to speak, you know. And Max would be like, okay, so Max is now playing with the top of the cream of the crop. So Max said, man, y'all got to come and hang out, you know, where I'm from, you know, with my people. Let's come to Brooklyn. So they would come, hang out. My father and them, these are the stories I grew up on. And then so my father had a group of guys, and they learned how to play chess right after World War II. They loved playing chess, and they called themselves the Chessmen. So it was like an unofficial club of these young brothers that loved jazz, played chess. I mean, it's some very intellectual shit, but they were also super cool, super hip. And they would all gather. My dad and his friends had rented this big house in Brooklyn, and they all lived in this house. And apparently this house had a big living room where they would give what they call sets, which was like a jazz gig, a jazz party. They said, man, we have a set. And they'd have groupings of guys that had their own groups. So they would come and jam together. So in that first photo where you got Monk, Miles, and Max, each one of these guys had their own groups. But if you can make it happen, these guys would be like, come on, and we'll do a gig together. They would work out what they're going to play, and boom, 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 and then they go and do a gig. And this is what these photos are representative of. It was one of my father's friends who took them. He passed away, God, Jimmy Morton. this is what's interesting about my dad and his crew. They'd all be touching 100 now because next year is the centennial of Max Roach. There's a bunch of things being planned. There's a documentary that's out. Well, they're not out yet, but they've screened it a couple of times. I'm in that. That'll be all rolling out. So these dudes would all be in the 100. They'll be a century old now.
But it's so funny that because the reason I ask, because basically your dad and his crew and his family, his friends passed the torch to you to tell your story, basically, or not. Am I wrong?
They ain't really pass it, but I seen the torch there and I picked it up. But that's the thing that fascinates me, because I wasn't as conscious, but continually as I look back at why and how I did the thing. Because, I was never afraid to pick up books and shit. It almost used to make me, I used to feel, this was quite a while ago, that how is all this happening? Like, do I deserve this? And then I realized, because I realized then that I put myself in a position for these things to happen as I set off on my journey. And then I was like, oh, because, I've read, I'll look shit up, I'll figure shit out, but I wasn't the best student on some formal shit. In fact, it's kind of an unfortunate period, but I'm comfortable talking about how they told me to leave high school before they kicked me out.
Why?
Which was devastating shit. Like my mother was highly upset with me. That was a real bad time as a young teen. I had fucked up badly. But in that time period when I had fucked up really badly, I kept thinking and began to figure out these pieces that I would then move on and execute, which was just like mind-blowing to have these ideas and to reach out and then meet people from the punk rock scene, and they come on and took me under the wing, as well as Jean-Michel, and that's when things began to actually happen. So
it's amazing hearing you talk about that. And that's another thing. Could you ever have imagined, like,
none of this?
No. When you look at hip hop now,
nothing. No, my aspirations. That's why I'm continually humbled by all of this stuff that you guys, gave such beautiful accolades to me. But I remain humble because, honey, I came up under Max Roach, Blondie. These people treated me so good. They were all so cool. So I realized then, like, when I see artists that become assholes, I go, fuck, man, how does this happen? But then when I think back at me, I'll go, man, how could I ever be that? When I had Max in my life, who was always like the coolest, like just, walking down the street with him as a kid and have people come up, like recognize him, was like, that was mind-blowing to me. And how gracious he would be to them were things that became a part of who I am. So and like I told you, I didn't, hey, I want to be on camera. I'm going to be that guy. It was at the last minute, Charlie talked me into doing Wild Style. I was like, oh God, how the fuck? Me on camera? I'm like, what the fuck? Figured that out. Then when they asked me to host Yo MTV Raps, I'm like, because this is who I am. I'm this dude that you're talking to. But I go into some slang shit like that, because that's a part of me too. But that's not generally how I get down. But when the idea to host Yo came about, I said, well, oh shit, I'll just be the character that I created for Wild Style. So I could put a little more, yo, what's up? Give a little energy to it and make it happen, as opposed to just straight being like a super nerd and shit, which I could easily be.
And that was another era. That was mind-blowing, because that was actually the first time we could witness that in '88, I believe it was.
Yes.
That was right. Another part. We didn't have, of course, no internet.
Yeah.
No in '88, I was, 12. I'm now going to be 50 next year.
Right.
I just was looking for anything related, and to see that on screen, and that was us. We wanted to dress like that. We wanted to look, and then we saw all our heroes that most of us hadn't even seen what they looked like until we got some Source magazines and stuff like that to actually put the face to the music.
Yeah.
that broke open, that was a one of the biggest reasons or start of the globalization,
Correct.
True.
the
True.
culture.
Yeah.
I mean, like, totally right, Asha. But also a year prior, before your MTV from the States came, we had the European version. They
Yeah.
dropped MTV dropped pilots or like a pilot series or whatever, if this could work with Sophie.
Yeah,
From
Sophie Bromley, who's a
Brown.
very close friend.
Word?
Sophie,
Yeah.
very close
Go ahead.
friend. Sophie's photos, you'll see when you see Contact High. When you come into Contact High, the first photos are the early stuff. And what is the amazing thing about Sophie, who's a North African French woman?
Yeah.
The amazing thing about Sophie, over the years, over the last recent years, as she sent me photos and she published a couple of books, she's got a good one out now called Yo. Sophie's the kind of person that was like a party girl on the scene.
Word.
But she would always have a good 35 millimeter camera. She would pull it out of her bag, take a few pictures, and then go back to partying. So I never remembered or saw Sophie as a photographer. But Sophie was so in the mix, super cool, hot North African French chick, ready to party at the drop of a hat. She was in the mix. Everybody loved her. Got with young homies from the Bronx. Everybody was a teenager. They had their room in their where they were living. Sophie, when you look at Sophie's pictures, you'll see at DXT's in his room. You know what I mean? Motherfuckers was in their rooms and shit. And Sophie's photos are the most comprehensive across graffiti, rapping. She was in the Bronx, she was here, she was France, than anybody has. There's other people that were early, Martha Cooper, Henry Chalfant on the graffiti, Joe Conzo mainly on Cold Crush in the Bronx. Sophie covered a broader spectrum. And so as she pulled out her contact sheets, it's like, I'm like, wait a minute, Sophie, nobody has this comprehensive a body of work as you, because she covered, hung with, it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to take your pictures at the Roxy in 1982. That's cool. Sophie did that. But then she was at the parties in the Bronx. She went to, okay, I'm going to go to your house and shoot you in your room, which is like, that's right. Everybody's a teenager. They still living at home with their parents. So Sophie's body of work is incredible. And because of that, her being so in the mix, and being in French and being interconnected with so many people, MTV Europe said, let's give this a try, because she knew everybody. So she did what was called the Yo Show for about a year or two before Yo MTV Rap started. So because she was connected with everybody, everybody heard, oh, that's that cute chick that was there. Oh yeah, she cool. When they come over to Europe, Sophie's like, yo, come through, do my show. But, you know, she's this French chick that's not really hip hop in a New York sense, but she was down as you can get and plugged in. And then we also did this tour, this European tour. Let me show you this here. This is another thing, which I'm sure you heard about. But this was the tour that grew out of, I made this record, Chance the Beat, which you know about. The French company, the record company, Celluloid, really felt like something big was coming. So next thing you know, they get Futura to do a record, DXT does a record, Phase 2, there's a group of 5 records, and they talk FNAC and Europe One, this big radio station, into doing this European rap tour. No records out except these records. And we toured Europe. That planted the seeds of hip hop in Europe. And to this day, well, it's not about buying records anymore, but France has always been the second biggest market because of those seeds that we planted when we went on that tour in 1982.
And then MC Solar was it there that he got really inspired?
He did get inspired. He was one. So the people that became the foundation of French rap all saw those first shows that we did. And Solar, when he began to bubble 10 years later, early 90s, I direct the video with him and Gangstar, which was a part of the Jazzmatazz
Jazzmatazz.
Records, La Bien Lamar. I make that video.
Word.
And so that
that's true, man. You also made, of course, a lot of videos.
I made over 60, 70 videos. I had the first video.
Okay.
When I do my talk, as I progress, Wild Style turned out to be film school for me. We made a real class. Then I'm like, I got film ideas. I tell you about my dad going to these demos. He's this intelligent black man trying to figure like there's got to be a better way. So I'm exploring all these other. I'm going to Martin Luther King. I want to hear what he got to say, but I'm checking Malcolm too. I want to hear this shit. My grandfather was a major Garveyite. So this is like, it's like if you're an intelligent black person and you go, how the fuck is this going on? This is some bullshit. There got to be a better way. And then when you hear there's somebody talking that shit that agrees with you, you be like, well, I want to hear what he got to say. That was Marcus Garvey, baby. You feel me? So my grandfather ran, later I learned, one of the chapters in Brooklyn of the UNIA. You feel me? So this is black people. If you was black at that time, you was either following W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, which were, you know, they was trying to do this thing called a talented 10th. They were very light skinned and they felt like we're going to be able to move amongst these white folks and get some doors open. Word. On the other side of that, it was Marcus Garvey saying, fuck all of that. Let's deal with Africa, get our own economics right. Let's get strong in our pockets, in our bank accounts. Then they will want to fuck with us. And Marcus Garvey organized more black people around the world than had ever been organized. And that's why they went after him and they took him out. But his mindset remained. And my grandfather and some of them West Indians still thought like Garvey and put together one of the first savings and loan institutions in New York because black people couldn't go to banks and get a loan. They had a thing, the Suriname people probably did it too. We have this thing called a susu. The West Indians, they saved that money and passed your money around until it was time to come back and you would get a bag. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We couldn't get loans. So we set up a saving loan. So that's part of my DNA.
Yo, but that's what I'm saying. Like you actually took that, or you took the torch and make it new. You reinvented your torch. That's what I'm seeing right now.
A remix.
You can deny it. But what I'm hearing right now, this is what you do, baby. This is what you do.
Sorta.
I mean like every night you saw it, you heard it, and it stuck with you, and now it's just a normal thing that you do. So you just not even aware. Well, you're aware of it, but it's just a part of your DNA, and that's basically how you want to bring up your kids to just see the stuff that the parents are doing to give the right example. For you to be humble, to be around greatness like Max Roach could never make you have to act a fool because you've seen the stature of somebody like that still being humble. And then your parents took you, you know, your father, your grandfather being a Garveyite, all those things.
Yep.
And then from being not really wanting to be in a movie, and still being in it, and then picking up all the skills you needed to then go on and make visual masterpieces for all these artists, to being on Yo MTV Raps hosting, and then taking that character of Fade and just making it big and just influencing the whole of us. It's super interesting.
It is, and it blows my mind still how this shit worked, how many significant parts worked. You know, it's really a delight.
The funny part is that because you didn't want to be in the scene, but in the early video clips that you did, let's say a microphone feed, you did that.
So what would happen? You're great. So what would happen was, being a film nerd, as I am about a lot of shit, grew up in front of the TV watching movies, and of course I love Alfred Hitchcock. Who would famously make cameos in his films. So the idea of doing a cameo became a thing. But what happened was, well, the first video I direct is my philosophy for Karis.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you this little story about that then, because how it attached to mine. Whenever I do a Patta talk in the country somewhere, so I talk about the store and that's it, they always wanted to know how I get addicted to sneakers and shit. In that video, KRS-One is wearing a Jordan 3.
dude, and other people have pointed that shit out. And I go, fuck, I'm probably wearing some night, but I was never that into sneakers. Now sneakerheads always like, yo, like I directed Gang Stars just to get a rep.
Yeah, the Ewings.
Yes, exactly. The Ewings. See, you a real sneakerhead. So other heads would be like, yo, you got them Ewings on. I'd be like, oh shit. Oh yeah. Because I got a close-up in the beginning when the guy throws the bottles
out. Yeah. But it's so funny because that visual, that when you followed KRS-One's feet, but also the Ewings, that's the only thing we had. We didn't know nothing. So we didn't have the shoes. We need to, what is that? So you would freeze the camera, you would freeze it, taking a dumbass picture or whatever, or even remember that sneaker, and then go to the States and pick them up.
That's incredible.
I remember when I wanted to pick up the Jordan 3s in New York, was my first time was in 89, but their shoes came out in 88.
Yes.
I didn't know. So I was walking around with like little, how you say that, back, the cover of the, let's say, Kid and Play album. On the back, they had the sneaker on. I cut them out, went to every sneaker store in Manhattan and point like, I need this, I need this. Dude's looking at me like, yo, dude, that was from last year. That's why I came back with Jordan 4s. I was disappointed, but I was looking for so hard for that shoe. It's because of you. You fucked my whole shit up.
Incredible.
Basically.
Not you.
I said, you're a real sneakerhead. I love it. By the way, I'm sure you probably seen well, it was Bobito's book. Was his book? Where'd you get those? Is that the name?
Where'd you get those? Yeah, I mean, like,
and then that first documentary, I'm in that too. What is that one called? A French dude directed it.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. I know this dude.
I always confuse that title.
No. Hold up. Fuck,
that one gets into Jew Man in the Bronx.
No. I got it. Hold up. Yeah. That's the one where fuck. It's like.
Wait.
Oh, you're muted.
Wait a minute.
No, you're muted. What happened?
It's a documentary which is really fun because what they do actually in that documentary is what I'm doing the whole time. I'm like, damn, there are more people like me like this. So that it was crazy. I'm gonna get into that book, into that movie in a bit. But Uncle Bob, which is now a good friend of mine, because not because of sneakers, not because of sneakers, because of records. I used to work in Fat Beats in Amsterdam. Fat Beats, the record.
Shit, there was a Fat Beats over there as well?
Yo, a Fat Beats in Amsterdam, yeah. That was in the 90s, like late 90s.
Wow. Okay.
97. So I used to work over there. That's how I became good with Bob, because he liked the way I play records. Later on, of course, when he started Footwork back in New York with Rich in Philadelphia, that's how I got like really close to the, to the guys like, oh, no, because of records.
Just for Kicks.
Just for Kicks, right? You go.
Yeah. French dude made that. I'm in that too. And good friends of mine. In fact, I told them to go get with Grandmaster Caz from the Cold Crush. Because he's so great in that. That was one of his. I said he's at his. He still lives in the projects, but he's so good in that. I told them, because those are my people. I said, yo, this dude here, he always wear the freshest shit. And that told a story about how the sneaker thing got popping here.
Yeah, no, I mean, like that, if I want to explain to people my, let's say, addiction to sneakers, I was like, just watch this movie. Then you have a little understanding, because you cannot understand, if you sell some, especially back in those days, this was like 2000 and something. If you would tell somebody
early 2000s, yeah,
you'd be like, yo, I got like 1,000 pairs of sneakers. They're like, is you crazy? Like, what is going on?
That's funny, because that doc was the first time I really saw there's a couple of people that were just super passionate collectors. And I mean, I would hear shit, but that really showed them who they were. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know it was that deep.
It's really that
I
deep.
love it though. And on top of that, when you see now, which still blows my mind, the influence in every luxury brand is putting out these sneakers. It's like, my mind's blown.
Though at one point, yes, On the other hand, no, because at the end of the day, you know, street and also hip hop in that particular sense,
Yeah,
is the most influential culture in the world. So when we wear, black people in general, if we wear shit
true.
that hip,
Mhm.
all the other people wants to buy that shit. You know how it is.
Yes.
That shit how it goes. So,
Yeah.
and the funniest part, of course, you know, we can talk for hours, of course, but like a simple example is Dapper Dan.
Yeah.
He used to make all these fake Louis,
Yeah.
now he's the fucking president of Gucci. What's going on?
No, well, not quite the president. I know that.
No, but you know what I'm trying to say.
No, exactly. I'm well aware. Dap's a dear friend. I'm a little pissed at something I'm not pissed. It's okay. But there's a clip, like at least 5 people have sent it to me.
All right.
It must be some interview he recently did. And Dap is saying in this interview that when he got raided and they shut him down, he's implying that was because, okay, so he got raided by the by the brands he was, Louis, Gucci, MCM, etc. But Dap is in this clip saying that was why MTV started blurring out things on artists' clothes, because they went as a result of them taking him out, because he was taking their brands and they came in and shut him down. So he figured that was the brands got MTV. It was he really has misconstrued the real thing that happened, and he feels he was responsible. The facts are, I'm well aware Dapper Dan, got pieces from him, had him on Yo MTV Raps, but Dap was only known to us at that time, and a small group of us, smart drug dealers in the streets, and the rappers that could afford it, that knew, oh, that's what Eric B and Rakim, what's that shit all about? Like, where's that shit coming from?
Yeah.
MTV didn't know shit about a Dapper Dan. It was companies like Guess and big clothing companies that were spending big money for ads on Yo MTV Raps and other shows on MTV are seeing every other video people wearing cross colors, Carl Kanan, Wu, where they're like, look, we're spending thousands to get a commercial on the channel. These motherfuckers running around and shit in every other video. Yeah. MTV was like, you're right. And then they started coming, because MTV didn't know shit about what this meant or that meant. The Gap, the famous story is when the Gap hired LL Cool J to do that commercial. He mentions FUBU in the rap and got a FUBU hat on. The Gap didn't know nothing about FUBU, for us, by us. That was, everybody in hip hop knew. So we were all like, yo, that's a slick ass move. And then the Gap heard, it was like, motherfucker, use us to sell that shit, you know.
He was mad or something.
Can we talk a little bit about that, the whole thing that you're saying about how whenever Black people wear something, which of course comes from making something from nothing, always being super creative with nothing, and then making it so big now that we can see across the eras of hip hop how the style of the rappers and the people actually involved in hip hop have made these amazing changes and are now to the point where big fashion brands, that everything that rappers wear is fashion. How is that possible?
I mean, look, it is what it is.
What do you think of? How do you feel when you?
I feel it's not as new as it may seem to you, because of my understanding of jazz and growing up in a space where that was what was going on, and I absorbed a lot of that and I learned from that. It's interesting. One of the great American writers, F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby is one of his famous books, coined an expression, the Jazz Age, which became representative of that period in New York and the world, specifically the 1920s, the Roaring 20s, the Jazz Age. The Jazz Age? That's the energy that we put down. That's Black folks celebrating getting out of the fucking deep South, which was damn near an extension of slavery, getting up to New York and Harlem, even though they were overcharging us to live here, and feeling like we could fucking celebrate now. We done got those crackers off our back. We can have a little fun. So the exuberance of that era and what went on creates what F. Scott Fitzgerald tapped into, seeing white folks dancing and doing the Charleston, trying to come up to Harlem and hang out and party and go to Cotton Club. So we were like influential culturally, even at that point. And I think how we did it, what we did, we just, once again, when we were in no position at that time to basically control any of those narratives, to basically market any of those things that we perfected at that time, that felt, because everything was so segregated. Yeah, they were like, when we shopped in anywhere we lived, we went to shop with us because they wasn't fucking with us. So why we going over there, you know, to somebody that won't even let us come in the back door? Like, fuck them. You feel? That's one of the big mistakes Black folks made, our leaders, when they wanted us to integrate and be with them. That wasn't the thing we should have did. We should have stayed on the track we'd been on, like, which led to what they did to us in Black Wall Street and dozens and dozens of other places that we don't hear about, where they just was fucking jealous and just envious of what we put together. And then they whipped them into a frenzy and they came and attacked us the same way they're we're seeing how they get down now. So some of these things, a lot has changed, but a lot is still the same. When we see what Trump, this is New York motherfucker, we know him all too well. The way he pulled this shit off and got in, it's like, yo, unbelievable. This motherfucker did this shit and duped all these dumbass motherfuckers that follow this shit. You know, that's what it is. And that's similar to what hadn't been dealt with back then. So I'm just aware of it. I'm looking at it closely. But once again, because we weren't in a position to, our innovations of style and how we choose to wear our hat and whatever we do, if we do it with confidence and a certain swag, as they say, it becomes the fucking thing, because we go, look, we don't give a fuck. We gonna wear it like this, no matter what you say. You feel me? And you ain't gonna, in the beginning, a lot of times what we do, they don't like it, but we drill this shit down so much that then the younger ones start, yo, I want to wear mine like this too. I want my pants to look like that. I want those sneakers and shit. And then it becomes a thing. And now it's $1 billion game still. We just got to get in better position to basically get a piece of that pie. And that's what I think a lot more of us are learning right now. I don't know if you're hip to Earn Your Leisure.
Yes.
No, you're totally right. And the thing is more.
Earn Your Leisure?
Yeah, what you were saying? Earn your what? Leisure?
You're shaking your head. Like you're hip to them?
Oh, yes, I've heard of them.
Yeah. They're on the gram and they give the longer things on YouTube. These guys exploded during the pandemic, just teaching people like us financial literacy. And they're so good and effective at it that some of the biggest, what's his name? The Black American billionaire. Oh, fuck. Anyway, some of the biggest people in the game sit with these young brothers to explain how they move their money around, like the real shit that we've never really had a grasp on mass, so that when we do get to a position or create these businesses or how to move in business correctly, these dudes have been doing phenomenal work. They've been selling out like big arenas for these Earn Your Leisure gatherings where they get a whole array of Black folks in various businesses to come and share with us how to do things that you've already done with your brand, and how to move your money around and how to play in this financial space that many of us have never really had the opportunity.
Totally agree. That's the key. That's the key at the end of the day. You gotta learn how to deal with the money that you're gonna get in, and especially also in the long run. So instead of like going from a 0 to 100 real quick, why don't go from a 0 to a 10, 10 to a 20, 20 to a 50, 50 to 100? Because then you learn the value of money, and also to invest in bigger and better things.
Guys, unfortunately, I've got a 1 o'clock right now.
Yeah, I gotta bounce too. I see you in Rotterdam, man. Fat Five.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It was
Thank you
great
for all
to
of
connect.
this.
Absolutely.
you.
It was my pleasure. Trust me.
Yeah, man.
All right, guys. See ya.
Bye.